So we're going to go ahead and get into the next portion of our program. We're going to honor Mr. Dirk Lohan, but we're going to hear first from Kim Dowdell, the president of AIA, and she's going to share with you her words in this next video.
Good evening. I'm Kimberly Dowdell, the 2024 president of the American Institute of Architects and a principal with HOK in Chicago. I'm delighted to join you virtually on this very special occasion, the 20th anniversary of the Edith Farnsworth House. I'd like to congratulate all of you for your ongoing support of this incredible asset. I'm proud that AIA contributed to the preservation of the house and land back in 2003, and that the Farnsworth House continues to be an important study site for architecture students across the country and around the globe to this day. Tonight, it is my great pleasure to present the inaugural Edith Farnsworth House Stewardship Award to none other than Mies van der Rohe's very own grandson, who is an accomplished architect in his own right, Mr. Dirk Lohan. Dirk has had a nearly lifelong relationship with the Farnsworth House since his grandfather sent him photos of the newly completed home back in 1951. When Dirk came to Chicago more than 60 years ago, he said one of the first buildings he wanted to see was the Farnsworth House. In 1968, he encouraged his friend and client, Peter Palumbo, to purchase the house, thus beginning Dirk's 56 years and counting of stewardship, including the last 6 years as a founding member of the Edith Farnsworth House Stewardship Council. Dirk's dedication of time, talent, and treasure have helped to ensure that Farnsworth House will continue on as a bright spot in the galaxy of architectural icons, and for this, we salute you. Congratulations.
Please stand and recognize Mr. Dirk Lohan. Now, this beautiful award is not just special because it has his handsome name on here. It's special because it's literally made from the Edith Farnsworth House. This is glass from the house. This is steel from the house. So, Mr. Lohan, please come up and receive your award, and we'll give your remarks. Hold on, please.
Well, I can tell you only I'm overwhelmed by the number of people that came for this and the honor to receive this first award for my favorite house. And I tell you a few anecdotes about my life and why it is my favorite house. Imagine me being 12 years old in Germany, Bavaria, outside Munich. Mies just finished Crown Hall 860 and the Farnsworth House. And he sent to my mother, who was his daughter, the black and white 8x11 Hedrick Blessing photographs. And she gave me the pictures of the Farnsworth House to decorate my bedroom with it, which I did. And believe me, I looked at that house every day. And I was amazed how different it was from what was done in Bavaria. Pitched roofs, tiles everywhere, and so on. When I came to Chicago a few years later, when I was 19, in 1957, I enrolled here at this school. My desk was in that corner there, which was a hot corner. And I needed to go to see the Farnsworth House in person. And I took a friend along, and we drove out to Plano, Illinois. At that time, she still lived there and owned the house. And as we got to River Road and the fence surrounding the property, I noticed some motion in the house behind the glass. We were not on the property, we were on the road. And it was Edith Farnsworth. And she bent down and took from her coffee table something, put it this way, and it was the huge binoculars. And she followed us as we walked around. And I tell you, it was like having a gun pointed at you. We never got into the property. It was a complete waste of time. But later then, of course, I managed to go there and also meet her. And I have very fond memories of those early visits. When she decided to move to Italy and sell the house, it occurred to me that it was on the market for a while, and it didn't very easily sell. There were not many families that could imagine living there. You had to sort of learn how to live in a glass house. I mean, that house taught you lessons and demanded your behavioral changes from the traditional common way of moving around and getting up and eating and so on. But a good friend of mine at the time, I mean, it was Peter Palumbo, for whom we were doing a design in London, the Lloyds Bank headquarters on Mansion House Square, next to the mayor's residence, office house in the city. And one day he said, Dirk, what do you think Mies would say if I asked him to design me a vacation house in Scotland? I have a wonderful property there, an island. And I said, oh, that would be wonderful. But at his age, I'm not so sure this is so important in his life at this point, because he was just around 80, to do another house. But the best house he ever did is the Farnsworth House. He said, where is it? I said, well, let's turn. I was driving a car. We went out there that same day and looked at the house. And he ended up buying the house. And then he asked me to take care of it. So that's how my stewardship began. I designed some of the furniture for it, the bed, the desk, the table, and the boot box. The boot box was an invention that I contributed to it, and because when you walked on a rainy day from the parking area to the house, your shoes got all wet and muddy or whatever, and the boot box was a place where you could sit down, take your boots off, and put them in a box and not see them. And that boot box is still in the house today, behind the desk. So Peter and I spent many times there. I spent some time staying in the house. I bought his china and silverware and glassware for what's in the Farnsworth House. So it was a pleasure. And at one time, I forget when that was, there was a Japanese photographer, Futagawa, who published books about famous buildings. It's Farnsworth House. I know you have it in the bookstore. GA Detail, yeah. he asked me to help him put this book together with drawings, as well as write the text, which I did. And there's a comment in there how Mies explained his work and this particular house. And it's interesting. He said, if you're an architect, you can write wonderful prose and make interesting and good buildings. But if you're really good, you will become a poet. And the house is sheer poetry. I added to it, and that's in that book. And I was pleased to hear today that, I don't know, was it your idea or whose idea, combining poetry with this event? So my compliments on that, because that's to me what this house is, poetry. Now that I'm standing here, another anecdote comes to my mind that you will enjoy. Mies was, as you know, interested in sort of universal architecture, meaning that the functions of a building can be adjusted as time goes on or by different people. It doesn't have to be so totally tailored to a particular use. And Crown Hall is a great example of that. It's a flexible space. Architects' tables, clean or dirty, they work. When I was here as a freshman in '57, shortly after this building was opened, I think it opened in '55, there was a homecoming dance for IIT students. I had no idea. In Germany, we don't have things like this. So they invited all the nurses of the hospitals around here as the ladies for the dance. And I thought, well, I should go there too, and I invited Mies as my date. So he went with me, and we came in there, up the steps there, and the band was playing here, and there was Duke Ellington. Really, in '57. And Duke Ellington heard that the architect of the building was in the space, and he said he'd like to meet him. So Mies went up to him, and they chatted for a while. And when he came back, he said, Duke Ellington said, "This building is acoustically perfect for my music." He was so proud. So, anyway, I have taken care of this house and always cared for it, supported it when I could, and I am so glad to see that it is in good hands with Scott, the National Trust, and even the Illinois Preservation, what are you officially called? Landmarks Preservation, Illinois, and so on. It's great. Unfortunately, I always regret a little bit that it's such a struggle to get out there for the most people, and therefore the tourist flow or the visitor flow is relatively low-key rather than flooded. My office is in the Rockery building, and the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation has an office there. And would you believe it, every day we have 24 people coming in there and looking at the Rockery building and wanting to go to the Frank Lloyd Wright thing. Again, let me conclude my remarks. I am greatly honored and appreciative for this honor, and good luck, and I'm sure there's some more speeches, and I'm looking forward to hearing them. Thank you.
Next, we would like to bring to the stage the President and CEO of Landmarks Illinois, Bonnie McDonald.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. I have the unenviable position of following that. A legend who tells incredible stories, and I'm also the predecessor to an incredible panel that you're about to see. And so it's like having the band in between the two big bands at a concert. And all you can hope for, it's like the jester, either they're quick or they're funny, or both. So I'm going for the former, quick, hoping for the latter, funny. So again, thank you, Omar, and congratulations to Dirk. You are a legend, and it is an honor to follow you. And it is also my distinguished honor to be here to represent Landmarks Illinois. I have had the privilege of having this position and being able to interact with one of the most incredible places of architecture, of history, of women's history on earth, and that is a distinguished privilege. And I thank everyone who is here for the honor of what you present, how you have stewarded the Farnsworth House. 20 years ago, the preservation community, that is all of us, came together to mobilize what was really an unprecedented campaign to save a landmark, an icon, something that had changed the history of architecture and had influenced residential design not only here in the United States, but all across the world. Preservationists had mobilized at that time to raise in just a few months, literally 2 months, $7 million, and to go to auction, to bid and to win the auction, which had never been done before. And I just want to say we didn't know what we could do before we did it. But what it proved to us is what we could do. And I think that that is the success of the Farnsworth House, the Edith Farnsworth House, is showing us that if we had courage and pluck, which I think we did, the National Trust, Landmarks Illinois, and the Friends of the Farnsworth House, that we really could find a solution for anything. So the legacy of this honor lives on, everyone, all around us, even in the neighborhood around us. So that courage that we had to stand up and to say something could be done is at the Rosenwald Apartments. It's at the old Cook County Hospital. It's at the old post office. It's at the James R. Thompson Center. This set the stage for what we could do in preservation, and I believe that it continues to influence us today. So I want to just thank those who made that possible, not only those in this room who continue to make this preservation a success, and hopefully you will continue to do so as donors for the future. But Landmarks Illinois operated this in conjunction with our partners, the National Trust for Historic Preservation. I would just like to truly recognize the staff at the Edith Farnsworth House, and especially Scott Mahaffey, for all the work he put into making tonight possible. Would you please honor him? We are very pleased to work as a partner with Scott. We still hold a preservation easement on this property, and I want to recognize our dedicated staff person. That would be Suzanne German, our Director of Reinvestment, who has really been a part of this effort for 20 years to monitor this. Would you please say thank you and raise your hand, Suzanne? And everybody, this work really would truly be impossible without the support of a board of directors. So I want to take you back 20 years to imagine what it was like to present this idea to a board of directors to purchase a house at auction. And thank goodness Joe Antunovich was there as the board chair for Landmarks Illinois, who said, yes, we can do this. So I would like to thank Joe and the board of directors, all of the staff, all of the donors from our organization, everybody from $10 to $1 million who made this possible. Would you please give them a round of applause? I also need to recognize somebody tremendously special who couldn't be with us tonight, and that's David Ballman. some of you may remember David. I am his successor. He was the president of Landmarks Illinois when this was happening, and he was really the catalyst for ensuring that we did this. So tonight, we keep David in our thoughts. He passed, unfortunately, all too young last October. So I would like to say thank you to David and others who have passed before this critical anniversary of the 20 years. That includes John Bryan, who is the CEO of Sara Lee Corporation, who led the fundraising with the Friends of the Farnsworth House. Richard Gray, who some of you may remember, the gallerist who did the auctioneering for us, and I'm sure Joe will tell that story about Richard Gray. And also the many people who participated, including Fairbank Carpenter, who was a dedicated donor and supporter of this. Without these dedicated leaders, we would not be here today. Just want to say we have challenges today that go beyond the scale of the Edith Farnsworth House. We have them ahead of us, but we can use this lesson to continue to inspire us to meet those challenges and beyond. And we're delighted to congratulate everyone in the room, and especially the National Trust, for this 20th anniversary. You know, working together and bringing the boldness and the courage to do this, I believe we'll celebrate many of these 20th anniversaries together. So I would like to thank you and introduce you to our moderator as our panelists take the stage. Panelists, would you please come up as I am introducing our distinguished moderator, Michelangelo Sabatino. So panelists, come up for a moment. Let me introduce you to Professor Michelangelo Sabatino. He is a professor of architectural history here at Illinois Tech and also is the inaugural John Vinci Distinguished Research Fellow. Many of you know John Vinci and his role as a student here as well. I'm not sure where his desk is, but probably close to Dirk's. Michelangelo is the leader of the PhD program here and is a prolific author, including the book that we are all going to buy tonight, right? Raise your hand, everyone, to purchase that. It's the most comprehensive history of this house and its preservation, so I do encourage you to support his work, purchase that tonight, and enjoy this panel, which I know that you will. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Bonnie, for your kind introduction, and thanks to all of you who have gathered here this evening in this beautiful one-room schoolhouse that we love so much. Before we proceed with our panel, I would just like to offer a very brief overview of our new book being presented here this evening for the first time. It is a collective effort supported financially by IIT's College of Architecture, along with the inaugural John Vinci Distinguished Research Fellowship, as well as the National Trust for Historic Preservation. This group photo on your left was taken at the ribbon cutting on May 15th, 2004, just over 20 years ago. It was held to celebrate the Edith Farnsworth House new joint ownership by Landmarks Illinois and the National Trust for Historic Preservation. The size of the audience gathered on a beautiful spring day really points to the collective enthusiasm for this landmark day in the history of the house as it opened to the public after the first 53 years in private ownership. As I wrote the book you see on the right, together with contributions by a handful of authors here with us tonight, raise your hands, Scott Mahaffey, he's busy, Hillary Lewis, where are you? As well as our publisher, Alan Rapp, there he is. I constantly came across individuals who were eager to share their experiences with the Edith Farnsworth House with me. Many of you are here tonight, and so I would like to extend a heartfelt thanks to all of you. From critics and artists who have engaged with the house over time, to docents who currently work at the site. Who are the docents here tonight? There you are. John, where are you with your fabulous, there he is. He has the best outfit of all of us. To Dirk Lohan and the Palombos, everyone generously shared their knowledge and time with me. When I showed Dirk the book as a proof, he remarked that there were many images. I have spent enough time now with Dirk to know that what he really thought was there may be a bit too many images, but he was too polite to say so. To my defense, however, I pointed out that for the first 53 years, the house was not open to the public, and that photography was in good and in bad a surrogate to the first-hand experience. As Dirk said, Edith wouldn't let him anywhere near it. And even with Palumbo, that opened it up occasionally to a select group of artists and photographers, it was never a collective opening to the general public as it is today. Lack of access also increased the mystery surrounding the house. That was an icon before it was ever visited. The photo on the left is one of the most important photos to be ever taken by Hedrick Blessing, with Mies on site directing how he was to take it. And this is borne out in Betty Bloom's fabulous oral histories. Derek Swalwell, whose photos grace the cover of the book, took this color version on your right. What is most significant about these two photos is that the house occupies only a third of the frame. It is nature the most important. The over-reliance upon photography has its limits. We all know that to really experience the Edith Farnsworth House, one must visit often and in different seasons and enjoy the leisurely drive through the cornfields of the Midwest. It is only by traversing this agricultural landscape, now sadly invaded by big box stores and warehouses, that one can really understand how radical a decision it was for Edith to commission a country house of this kind at the time she did. This beautiful aerial photo shows the 60-acre site. It is no coincidence that you can barely make out the house. Does anyone see it? Barely. I was very intentional in the book about showing many photos of the site and surrounding forest and agricultural land, because over time, some photographers, I hate to say it, New Yorkers, are there any New Yorkers in the crowd? Have focused excessively on the house, cropping out the land. They have objectified it. And above all, they have taken the house from the outside as opposed to the inside out. And for those who, like me, thanks to Scott, was able to lie on Edith's bed, you realize that, or Palumbo's bed, you realize that the house literally disappears when you're in it, looking out. A very profound, different experience than looking from the outside in. To understand the site in its entirety, one can understand the resources, hint, hint, philanthropy, it takes to manage the site. This is not just a house, but 60 acres, a very complex site. For the first time, you will read, for those of you who are kind enough to buy the book, read chapters 11, 12, and 13 of Edith's unpublished memoirs. Here you will finally get Edith's version of the story. I hope that once and for all this will put a stop to the gossip mill surrounding the nature of her relationship with Mies, which was strictly professional. Center and right, you will see the rather small size notebooks in which she hand wrote her memoirs. They are here in Chicago at the Newberry Library. The book features a couple pages of her notebooks, of her handwritten notebooks, because I really wanted to give the feel of her handwriting and her voice. Special thanks to my partner there, Sergio Ambrose, for his help transcribing the difficult handwriting. And believe me, it was agonizing to read Edith and then make any sense of it. The second life of the Edith Farnsworth House was occupied by the Palumbo era. You will find an interview in the book with Hyatt and Peter. First with Palumbo and then with his second wife, Hyatt Palumbo. The house was lovingly restored and displayed, open to a select group of people. The Palumbos deserve credit for preserving and stewarding the house for over 30 years before selling it at a very high price tag that made local fundraising a bit of a challenge and annoyed some others for the steepness of that price tag. But that's another story. And finally, we arrived to 2004, the moment in which Landmarks Illinois National Trust entered a few years after Palumbo restored the house after the cataclysmic flood of 1996, seen here on the left. While Landmarks Illinois gave up managing the site in 2010, they were key to the first years of transforming the house from a private residence to a residence open to the public. Here to the right, we see Maurice Parrish on the far left. He was one of the former executive directors of the house and was supposed to participate on the panel tonight, but had to cancel for health reasons. To him and all the folks at Landmarks Illinois and National Trust for Historic Preservation who have worked to make the Edith Farnsworth House open to the public goes a heartfelt thanks. And now to our panelists. So we will proceed here. There's 3 questions. Each of our distinguished panelists will proceed to answer one question. We'll go through the list, and I will start with the very first question. And rather than read a sort of classic bio and everyone's waiting to see the pictures, we are going to allow our panelists to give their own stories. So with this, I give the word to our friend Joe Antunovich, and I'm going to ask the question, what is your background and your role in Chicago as it relates to advocacy, preservation, and stewardship of the Edith Farnsworth and or the built environment? Question. And as part of your answer, you'd also share your favorite memory of visiting the Farnsworth House. Joe?
Do I have a time limit?
Just, you have 2 minutes, and then the dong is going to...
Good evening. I'm Joe Antunovich, chairman of Antunovich Associates, an architecture firm here in Chicago. If you detect a slight accent, like with Dirk, a slight accent, I was born in New Zealand. I came to the United States to go to university. I went to the University of Southern California, where I got my bachelor's and my master's degree. And actually my connection with Crown Hall was I studied for 3 years with Mr. Caldwell at USC, so that kind of made the link to moving to Chicago in '74, where I joined the office of Mies van der Rohe and actually worked with Dirk until 1989. And we successfully completed a number of wonderful projects together. I also was lucky enough to sit in the office next to Dirk at this beautiful oak table, and little did I realize, but I realized quickly, that was Mies's dining room table. So the famous photograph of Mies with the scar and his hand on the table that was the table I sat with every morning as I came to work. And Dirk just told me that's now his dining room table at his house where he lives. I think the table's been around for 95 years, Dirk, some amazing number of years. 80 years, just beautiful. I went on, and we've become experts. Well, if you can become an expert in historic preservation, we've renovated with Gunny Haba. I saw Gunny here earlier, the Reliance building, and we have had a very successful relationship restoring the buildings in the Treehouse campus along Erie Street. And so really historic preservation has become a love of mine. I was introduced to Landmarks Illinois almost 30 years ago, and they caught me, and I happened to be chairman of the board during the time the Farnsworth House went up for sale. And I'm so proud to say that I went to the board meeting, stood up and said, I have an idea. We're going to save the Farnsworth House. I say we approve $1 million and donate that along with the National Trust. So we had our first $2 million. And then when the day of the auction, we needed another million. So John Bryan told us. And so we passed legislation in a small luncheon at the Museum of Modern Art, and we gave another $1 million. So the National Trust gave another $1 million. So these two preservation organizations came up with $4 million, which was fantastic.
And Joe, you have these two images that you asked me to put into PowerPoint. You want to speak to those?
Oh, I just wanted to, you asked what is your relationship with preservation here in Chicago. We're working architects, and so we work with older buildings and as part of our work. And I just wanted to illustrate that these are some of the buildings we've worked on. The one on the left I mentioned in collaboration with Gunny Haba, and on the right we did all of the restoration of Richard's three houses along Erie Street, most recently the Murphy Auditorium that was purchased from the College of Surgeons. So that's how I got heavily involved in preservation with Landmarks Illinois.
Thank you.
And they haven't left me alone since.
And now to Elizabeth Blasius. And Elizabeth, what is your background and your role in Chicago as it relates to advocacy, preservation, and stewardship?
I'm Elizabeth Blasius. I'm an architectural historian and I'm a writer, and I'm a partner in the Chicago-based commercial historic preservation firm Preservation Futures. We sort of work on, we work with clients that are, we focus on places and narratives that are deserving and definitely desire the resources and the recognition of preservation, but maybe lie outside of preservation's typical purview. So we work on a lot of vernacular buildings, a lot of buildings with cultural history, and a lot of buildings of the recent past, the mid-century modernism, brutalism, and postmodernism. So to sort of illustrate the diversity of our work, we've done work on the James R. Thompson Center, but we also have a long-standing relationship with the Emmett and Mamie Till Mobley House, which is a pretty far-ranging range of preservation projects. Joe, I have to say, my first actual job in preservation was bartending at the Atwood Cafe in the Hotel Burnham. So there you go.
How did you like the design?
I mean, everything had to connect with my personal life, with my professional life. So, of course, the design was perfect. Preservation Futures is a firm that we rely very heavily on how advocacy and preservation sort of leads the field. The Edith Farnsworth House, the name change in 2021 was really inspiring to us because in 2021, the city of Chicago changed the name of Chicago's oldest house, the 1836 Henry B. Clark House, to recognize Bishop Lewis Henry Ford, who is Chicago's first historic preservationist. He was a country preacher from Clarksdale, Mississippi, who purchased the house in 1941 and prevented it from demolition. And he really was a wonderful steward of the house, along with the St. Paul Church of God in Christ, for over 30 years. In 1977, the city of Chicago purchases the house and turns it into the Clark House Museum, a house that is a museum that sort of tells this story of antebellum Chicago, pioneer-era Chicago. And that museum completely left Bishop Ford's stewardship, that almost 40 years worth of stewardship, out of the narrative. So changing the name really sort of jump-started that process to really learn more about Bishop Ford, what the what early work in preservation of Chicago is. So the Edith Farnsworth House name change was really relevant to that work. When you add Edith's name to the Farnsworth House, the Dr. Edith Farnsworth House, you really kind of open up this opportunity to learn more about who Edith was. You kind of break this mold of heteronormativity, of gender sort of normativity in, who is a patron of architecture. Patrons of architecture are often men, and here's Edith Farnsworth doing this incredibly radical thing in 1946 through 1951. Gosh, what a long time to wait for a vacation house.
Exactly.
So she's waiting for this vacation house. She's this incredible patron of mid-century modern architecture, and the name really kind of puts her within that zeitgeist.
And Elizabeth, there's one image that is there too, which is the only published image of Edith in her house during her lifetime by André Kertész. And so despite the hefty copyright fees associated with using that, we decided to, just in case you think that we make money writing books, we decided to put that on the very back cover. So that is the only photo of her published. Of course, there's images have circulated subsequently of personal photos, but that was the only official one. So, and now our third panelist, Crystal Moten.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here with all of you all. My name is Crystal Moten. I am a public historian, curator, and author whose primary research interests include understanding the hidden histories of African Americans in the Midwest. And so my research focus to date has focused on African Americans who live in urban places. And so I've recently written a book called Continually Working that explores the economic justice-related activism of Black working women in post-war Milwaukee. However, I should have started with the most important point, and that is I am a Chicagoan through and through, born and raised on the South Side, and this is how I know there are incredible stories and hidden histories of African Americans that are still yet to be told. So that's a little bit about me, but one other thing I'd like to also share is I'm currently the inaugural curator of collections and exhibitions at the Obama Presidential Center Museum. Thank you. Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you. I'm very delighted to be back home in my hometown after having not lived in the city for 20 years. And so coming back to work at the Obama Presidential Center Museum is a homecoming for me, where I am able to connect my personal life, my professional life, and my deep and abiding interest in preservation and heritage and also public history. When I think about the Edith Farnsworth House, I approach my thoughts and my perspective from the vantage point of being a social historian, of really understanding the historical context in which Edith Farnsworth, Dr. Edith Farnsworth, lived and worked. When I was first thinking about the Farnsworth House and specifically its location, I was just struck and amazed that a woman in mid-century United States could have the gall to say, I want a country home where I can go and vacation after I do my work as a medical doctor. That's amazing, right? We sit here and we say this is 2024 and there's so many possibilities, but think back, and as a historian I often think back to the obstacles and the obstructions that stood in Dr. Farnsworth's way that made that difficult, and imagine her plowing through all of those, right? And so I think about all of that. But again, back to my story with the Obama Presidential Center Museum, which I think you might see the aerial shot. When I think also about my first experience of the Farnsworth House, it's driving through those cornfields, understanding the landscape that you have to cross, the journey that you have to experience in order to then see the Farnsworth House that is revealed in nature. But first you must appreciate that nature, and you must acknowledge the history and the people who were on that land before. And so that's what I think about when I think about the Farnsworth House. When I think about my connection to preservation in Chicago, it's the people, it's the land, and thinking about how together we can learn from that and also preserve our history while also thinking forward about our future.
Thank you, Crystal. And now, Lisa Lee.
Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here tonight. I'm almost levitating. I love Mies van der Rohe. My whole work and my life has been dedicated to thinking about the power of place and memory. So as you can imagine, this is such a special evening. I love house museums, and so ever since I came to Chicago, I've been working with house museums, and maybe some of you know that there's more house museums in the United States than McDonald's, Burger King's, and Taco Bell's combined, right? But only 0.1% of them actually tell the story of people of color, of women, of working people. Most of the historic houses in the United States are dedicated to telling the story of the great architects or the white men who lived in these homes. Now, we live in the great city of Chicago, which is the home of Second City and improvisation, and you all know the phrase of improvisation, which is yes and, right? And so I worked at the Jane Addams Hull House Museum, amazing small historic house that told the story of America's first woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. But it was also a yes and space, because it was also a space that Mary Kaiser, the housekeeper, lived and worked in. It was also the house where Florence Kelley and Julia Alto, all of these amazing resident activists also worked, and also the tens of thousands of immigrants who came through Hull House's doors every single day. And so the mission that I felt I was called to was to have a call to our nation to have a much more inclusive foundation for the stories that we tell, that we preserve, and that we circulate, and the curiosity that anybody who comes in the doors might ask, right? Which is when we had a project with the Domestic Workers Union and they said to me, who cleaned this house? And it raised a whole set of different kinds of questions. Currently, my job is as the executive director of the National Public Housing Museum, another historic house museum on the near west side of Chicago. And I'm so proud to be committed to telling the stories of the many families who lived in the Jane Addams homes, but also the stories of the groundskeepers who actually cleaned these houses. Edgar Miller, who created the built environment, beautiful statues that are in the courtyard. John Hollibird, the architect who committed himself to building public housing at that time. And so there's just so many different stories that we can tell through our work, and that's why I feel so called to preservation. There's a beautiful quote by John Berger, which is, "Never again will a single story be told as if it's the only one." And I really feel like that's the mission for preservationists today.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. So, we're going to cycle in the second question. So, and to Joe, so how might resources be invested that help the Edith Farnsworth House create revenue-generating opportunities that are National Trust for Historic Preservation mission-aligned of telling, and for those of you who visited the National Trust website, you'll know this motto, telling the full American story. So, Joe?
Well, thank you. I believe that there's 10 or 12 modern houses that have been built around the world that have elevated themselves to a work of art status. And we're very lucky in America that the majority of those homes are here by modern architects, designed by world-renowned architects. These are buildings that we must protect, we must continue to be stewards of, no matter what. And the Farnsworth House is a great example of one of those homes being a work of art that's acknowledged worldwide as one of the greatest houses ever built in the modern times. Other examples are Falling Water. Those of you who've been there, people ask me, when's the best time to go to Falling Water? I say 4 times a year. And I have been. It's just fantastic. But a completely different place, but an equally magnificent work of art. Or if you've been to the Gamble House in Pasadena, The outside doesn't do it justice. Go inside, or as a student at USC, sleep a night in one of the bedrooms. You don't sleep, you just look at all the architectural details. It's a work of art, something of beauty that we should protect at all costs. And of course, here in Chicago, we have the Roby House, which is just an incredible opportunity right here in Chicago. You can visit all of these places through the house tours, and that is why we must continue to preserve and take care of and be stewards of. Go out to Plano and see this magnificent home that we should absolutely be at the top of our list for preservation for generations to come, because this is an expression of art and architecture from our generation and from our generation of architects and artists.
Thank you, Joe. Elizabeth?
I found this question to be really tricky because it's about revenue generation, but historic sites, museums don't run on magic. They run on endowments and funding and getting butts in the door to actually see the site. I feel like the Edith Farnsworth House needs to continue to invest in creative work like they've been doing since Scott became executive director in 2018. The Luftwerk exhibit to the left with Eker Gill is a great example of that, activating the house as this sort of blank canvas for just really interesting stuff. So using technology, using light. I have to admit that I was really compelled by the Virgil Abloh photos in Michelangelo's book because, and people are going to test me on this, I really feel like Virgil Abloh is one of the probably the most important, most culturally significant export that IIT has ever, developed. Fashion, shoes, clothing, music, album covers, music videos, just a broad swath of amazing creative work. And it all comes from this IIT this IIT idiom, this modernist idiom. It comes from this little, this big one-room schoolhouse here at IIT to, Virgil being photographed there in 2018, after becoming the Louis Vuitton menswear creative director. So, I really feel like it's more creative work. It's investing in that creative work that's really going to, get more people out to the Farnsworth House. But then also there's sort of there's a sharing of resources, there's an inspiration, there's a creative inspiration that will go on there as well.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. And Crystal.
So I approach this question a little bit differently. I am a social historian. I don't do well with numbers, and so the revenue part of the question, I'm just going to put that aside. And what I want to focus on is thinking really expansively about what resources mean. When I think what resources are as a social historian and think about that connection to the Edith Farnsworth House, I think about material culture. And I think about the objects we need to fully understand and tell the story from Dr. Farnsworth's perspective. And so in thinking about that, then I wonder about the collections or the artifacts that would then help us interpret and tell that story. And to me, that's a wonderful resource that I think we can continue to explore. There was an exhibit that featured Dr. Farnsworth, or items from Dr. Farnsworth's time in the house. And so thinking really strategically about what that would mean to continue to populate the house with artifacts of that kind. And so on the one hand, I think about material culture and objects and artifacts and stewarding of them, and I'm a curator, so I'm supposed to think that way. But then on the other hand, I think about the resource of human resources and the people that we need to continue to strengthen and bolster so that they can be able to tell and interpret that story and invite visitors and welcome them in like I was welcomed in on the tour that I had to the Dr. Edith Farnsworth House. And so for me, it's material culture, objects as a resource, and then it's human people as a resource, as thinking about the ways that we can use that revenue, those dollars, to support and bolster both of those.
Thank you, Crystal. And these images, one is the handwritten memoirs, and the other is Edith lounging with her friend Beth Dunlap. We're going to get to the subsequent images of the interiors, but this speaks to Crystal's interest in the people first, and then the architecture, and vice versa.
That's right. Thank you.
No, and I love, whenever I think about capital, I always think of capital, and also social capital and cultural capital, which really, sort of need to work together in our society. I love this question so much, so I kind of have a pastime with my other historic house friends where we sit down and think like, ooh, what would you do in this house, right? And so for this one, I got together with some of my friends and we were sort of thinking, and a lot of how I think is, how do we make this house relevant to the most capacious group of people that are out there in the world, the multiple publics who we really believe should come to this house, should understand it, and also not just to have knowledge poured into them, but to actually draw in the knowledge that they already have and pour it into the house, right? And there's a little bit where maybe I would differ from Joe, that instead of seeing it as exceptional, because people know me, know that I actually think every single historic site and house has the potential of being the world's greatest site, or the world's greatest, whatever. It's like the pizza, right? You've tried the best, now try the best. That we really should believe that every single site is the most important, because the people who live there and work there and sort of breathe the air there, they actually also believe that about themselves. They should have believed that about themselves and the place. And one of the things for me when I think about the Dr. Edith Farnsworth House is, well, one, I have a sort of secret history as I got a German PhD, and one of the things I worked on is the sort of long history and the relationship of the public and the private. How do we create a private which is not just surveilled by the public sphere, and how do we create a public sphere which is radically democratic and one which is, worthy of its name? And for me, there's no better place than the Farnsworth House to be thinking about that issue, especially in these times, of like, what is the relationship of the private sphere and the public? And how did people live? Like, how did she live in the space that we were just talking about, which was so open in some way, but also, as the wonderful poet said, a space which was confined, but also so liberatory and free. So that's something that I think is such a possibility. Or if you think about a series of civic dialogues about people who live in glass houses, right? And like, how would that work to invite people in to cross boundaries and barriers to talk about the political and social moment that we live in? And how might the Farnsworth House be a jumping point and a catalyst to engage in those kinds of series of civic dialogues? And then I also agree that sort of working with artists is one of the best ways to unleash our radical imaginations. Some of the pictures that I had shared with Michael were work
Angelo.
Michelangelo, sorry, Michelangelo, where sort of the paint chips that we had recovered from inside the historic buildings of the Jane Addams homes, and then turning those paint chips over to Amanda Williams and Ola Lekin-Jayafos and inviting them to sort of imagine the sort of beautiful, radical joy of all the people who've painted those spaces in which they lived, right? And so working with artists and inviting them to see the house as the kind of material from which they would also unleash our imaginations.
And Lisa, you also, Edgar Miller's giant stone sculptures, and how the children might engage that.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly say that we did help to restore those Edgar Miller statues, will be brought back to the courtyard, and the interpretation is of course about Edgar Miller, but it's also about the WPA stone carvers who helped to carve them, all the different generations of people who lived with those animals, and so there'll be audio and oral histories that people can listen to, and then also the important work of preservation and what it actually took to save these animals and what it means for future generations.
Thank you. So we are on our last set of questions, and I thank you for your patience, but I think we're We're good. So, Joe, mindful of time, I know you have lots of stories to tell us. In your opinion, how has presenting and interpreting the Edith Farnsworth House and modern architecture in general changed over the last 20 years? And what might be new opportunities for the future, given that we're envisioning Farnsworth living well into the future? And so what might they be?
Well, I think you mentioned the different phases, really, that the building has gone through. The first 20 years with Ms. Farnsworth, and then the time that Peter Palumbo operated the house, and he, with Dirk's left hand, brought it back to how Mies, perhaps, really wanted the building to look. And I think that then the next 20 years has shown us a progression that's really wonderful. The acknowledgement that the client is just as important as the architect, and especially here where the client is a distinguished doctor, a female, living 2 hours out of Chicago. When you think it's really revolutionary. But I had misgivings about when they told me they were going to put her furniture back in. And then when I went out there, I was blown away. I was just absolutely blown away, because that's how the house was lived in for the first 20 years. And I must compliment the National Trust for then actually encouraging young students, mostly from high schools, to come, and the impact that that has had on those individuals. So much interest in architecture by men and by women to get into architecture. They're just overwhelmed by visiting. So the continuation of that educational program to all of the high schools in the area, wouldn't it be great if we could get students from high schools in Chicago to get on a bus, take them out there and spend a day at the Farnsworth House? I can see that evolving, along with the buses to take and bring the tourists from downtown. I think we could do a better job with bringing the students, the tourists back and forth. However, I think that now that we're looking at different ways of sustaining the building, protecting the building from flooding, there's a sustainability aspect to this that's a real story in itself too, that you're not just going to drop a house into the middle of a woodland alongside a river that floods with an architect that lifts the house 5 feet above the floodplain. No, there's a bigger sustainability story as we discuss different options for protecting the house. And that, I believe, is going to be a major, major story that can be told about the success of the Farnsworth House, and still keep its status as this wonderful work of art.
Thank you.
On the Fox River.
Thank you, Joe. And so the reinstallation of Edith's furniture, there's a play by Judith Finfer, and then students observing the house in these images. So we've covered a big range. Elizabeth.
I'm an architectural historian, but I've also kind of self-styled myself as a historian of historic preservation. If there ever was one, it's me. The preservation of modern architecture is now a part of the history of the practice of historic preservation. So we not only have the period of significance, but we also have the period of stewardship. So who moved the building from a building or a historic site from, being inhabited by the original inhabitants through, oh, this is just an old building, to, oh, this is a preservation advocacy issue. I feel like Michelangelo has sort of recorded that in his book, which is really wonderful, and I hope this panel, this event, and also the book sort of encourages us to kind of tell more stories and sort of really impart them into the history and the practice of preservation. How did we preserve a thing? So what was the process? So who were the people involved? That I feel like is really important, and I really hope that this effort and the book and all of this sort of encourages more discussion on that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we have Elizabeth Ernst photograph of late 80s when she went out to photograph Peter Palumbo. I think this is the best portrait of house and owner. And then to the right, of course, beautiful photo of David Ballman pulling up his sleeves, or he had short sleeves, he didn't have to pull them up, going to showing like preservation in action. And I will, a special call out to Jim Peters, who used this photo in the obit, and I saw it like 3 days before we were going to press, and I begged the graphic designer to put it in. So this was a beautiful shot and worthy, I think, of the history of the Farnsworth. Crystal, now I threw in the pictures that you wanted here with the non-conforming furniture.
Yeah, I asked to include those photos because as I was thinking about the possibilities of interpreting the Edith Farnsworth House and thinking about some of the changes in both architectural history but also social history over these last 20 years, I think about the language and the understanding that we now have as it relates to gender and sexuality and what that will allow us to ask of the archive. And so when I think then, Michelangelo, of your inclusion of the memoirs, right, in the book, and then also our ability to access Dr. Farnsworth's memoirs at the Newberry Library, I then think, what are the possibilities for the questions that we might ask, and what might some of those answers be, given what we're able to understand about gender and sexuality. And so we know that when Dr. Farnsworth was living in the mid-century United States, there were understandings and words that were not spoken about who one could be fully in this society. There were understandings around what homosocial relationships might be and the possibilities of those, and yet we know that people still engaged in those. And so now we have the relationship to more expansively understand gender and sexuality. And so how might that help us understand some of what we're seeing in the archive, some of what we're seeing in terms of what's happening in the house? And so I wanted to explore the photos that you see on the screen to help us begin to really think about some of these questions that we were unable to pose, but then also think about what our answers might be. And I think this also connects to our ability to engage and invite all people from all backgrounds to the Dr. Edith Farnsworth House. And if we can think expansively and intersectionally about our identities and how to live in those in the fullness of our identities, I think that will help us get to the next 20 years of the Dr. Edith Farnsworth House.
Hear, hear.
Love that.
Thank you. And Lisa, you have your closing images.
Oh, yeah. Those maybe are a little bit silly images, but in the National Public Housing Museum, we'll have something called the Rec Room, which is curated by DJ Spinderella from Salt and Pepper. And we are telling the stories of the hundreds of musicians around the country who created the soundtrack of American life, who lived and grew up in public housing. And one of the things I was thinking about is, how does the Edith Farnsworth House become a kind of portal to different houses, different spaces, and the issues that matter to everyone across the globe, really. And so, I was looking up, for example, the Illinois Floodplain Community Justice Network, and people who are thinking about climate change and how it increasing temperature, increases storm surges, and what this might mean for, communities that are in India, and what could Farnsworth House actually tell people about this. And so it's not to say that the very small and also direct history is not important. It's always the particular that opens us all up to the universal. And so I really do believe that this space can and should become a portal to the most important issues that we should all be thinking about today in humanity.
Thank you, Lisa, and thanks to all. And as I invite you to exit off the podium, I invite my friend and distinguished executive director to provide the closing remarks.
All right, terrific. Thank you, everyone. And we are very appreciative for everyone coming out this evening. We've had a beautiful evening. Let's give a round of applause to all of our speakers. And we we've recognized the host and event committees and Edith Farnsworth House staff and our National Trust colleagues, but I do want to also thank Michelangelo and Alan Rapp and the team, really, who made this 20th anniversary book happen. So thank you. You all deserve a wonderful round of applause. And if you don't have the book yet, Michelangelo is going to be signing copies right here behind the wall. So, and you can buy them at the gift shop at Farnsworth. So if you haven't been in a while, please come and you can purchase it and enjoy a tour. Also, we can buy it on our Shopify site and have it mailed to you directly anywhere in the world. So most of you are well acquainted with our history, so I just want to end this evening with a few words about our future. And this is a quick study diagram of our visitor center expansion. Those of you who know the history of the visitor center at Farnsworth know that Peter Palumbo built it quickly as a pole barn in 1996 to be a temporary building because Zaha Hadid was going to design our visitor center. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Maybe a good thing in retrospect, more people would come to see the visitor center than the house. But we are desperately in need of more space, and especially exhibition and programming space. So we're working diligently on how we can do this. We have done a lot of programming, as was mentioned, in the past 5 years, and we do it indoor, we do it outdoor, wherever we can have the shelter of a roof in case a rainstorm comes along. So we definitely need more programming space. The Trust, as you might or might not know, has invested over $2.5 million in Farnsworth over the past 4 years. So first, completely restoring the lower terrace of the house. And if you haven't seen it since it's completed, I really encourage you to come. It was a disaster before and a safety hazard, and now it's absolutely beautiful. And then just recently replacing 8 of the original non-tempered glass windows in the house. There are only 2 left. Thankfully, they have safety film on them. But this was quite a project. Also replacing the roof, repairing the ceiling. So a lot of work has happened over the past 4 years, and your support has made that possible. Those of you who give to Farnsworth, this is what your money's going to. Not only our fabulous programming and exhibitions, but actually restoring the house and the site. I wanted to mention briefly that we're also working on the landscape. Some of you know these fabulous old photographs of the landscape as it looked in the Farnsworth era, and it was very naturalistic. Misa's good colleague, Alfred Caldwell, who worked with Jens Jensen, worked on the landscape in the early years. And it was, I always joke that it was like one of Misa's, Lakeshore Drive units just flown by helicopter out and dropped into the prairie. And of course, Lord Palumbo, as we know, had a different aesthetic. So a lot of that was wiped away. So our new landscape is really pulling together the trees and remaining pieces of the Palumbo era landscape, but reintroducing the shrub layer and the native grasses and forbs that existed during the Farnsworth era. So we're kind of returning it to its original design setting. We're also looking at adaptive reuse projects. The garage, which was originally built by Dr. Farnsworth in 1951 and then expanded by Peter Palumbo. The swimming pool, which was added in the 1980s and hasn't thankfully had a swimmer in it since 2000. And I think the creature from the Black Lagoon is the only thing swimming in there now. And the tennis court, which is looks like peanut brittle at this point, green peanut brittle. But, we really have to do something with these structures, and in order to justify the expense, we really have to put them to better public use. So we're looking at the possibility of renovating them for a separate event space. And then, of course, those of you who have participated in our planning workshops over the past 4 years or completed visitor surveys, and there will be more, thank you, thank you, thank you. Our earned revenue models, just like our visitation models, require diversity. We need lots of different revenue streams, so thank you, thank you. There's a QR code in your program. I encourage all of you to use it. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you so much, and good night.